My name's Stephanie. I'm a yoga teacher, spiritual teacher, and this workshop that you're participating in today has everything to do with being an empath. To start tonight's workshop, this is my fourth, I believe, spiritual teaching workshop. I typically teach yoga, but I'm moving rapidly into this direction because I'm really passionate about doing these lectures. And I want to start by saying my name is Stephanie and I'm an empath. There is no better person to teach a class on empathy than if you have empathy, okay? Everybody has empathy, but being an empath, so that's very different. You all said something very similar. And if you've attended any of the other workshops that we've had previously, it's pretty uncanny how the souls that show up in the space are very, very similar and almost to a T at times. And if you've been to some of the past workshops, there's just this collective energy, like we're all supposed to be here at that moment. And a lot of special things happen in that space. When I lead these workshops, I don't need to be labeled necessarily as a teacher. I'd rather be called a facilitator because I want us to all work together. This is how things get healed. This is how things come to the surface when we communicate, okay? So if you feel like you want to share something or pause me or you have a question, please ask. The more we all collectively work together, the more we're going to work towards healing, okay? I love that several of you said, I'm not crazy. Right? Because I think when you have these feelings, you do feel very isolated from the collective. There is not a particularly high amount of society that have this high level of empathy. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's not nearly as high, maybe as you may think. And then there's also a spectrum of being empathic. Okay, so there's people who are sensitive, maybe highly sensitive, but not necessarily full-blown spectrum of empathy, or being that heavy-duty empathic quality. So a big wide range. So without really knowing you guys on a deeper level, we may all slightly range on the spectrum, but I think underlying, whatever we're at, we all can agree and recognize that we feel a lot of similar qualities. Another thing that you mentioned, tell me your name again, I'm sorry. Allie, I don't want to call you. Another thing Allie mentioned was that when you start to figure out that people like you exist and there's a name to it, it's a big relief. But then a lot of times what happens is we're already exhausted and drained when we find this, so we need to immediately get into the tools as to how we shield ourselves, how we protect ourselves. We're going to get into how to protect yourself, but what is more important for me, okay, what's really more important for me is to not only share with you guys how to protect yourself, but to have you guys embrace the power of being an empath, so you don't have to isolate, you don't have to hide, you don't have to feel like you're necessarily super different. We don't want this to be a disempowering quality. Being empathic is a gift. You see this everywhere. It is not a curse, it is a gift. A lot of people feel like, oh my gosh, I'm carrying like 100 people's emotions at any time, and this is a nightmare, right? But if you learn really specific ways on how to deal with this and you bring awareness to what you're feeling and you start to process what you're feeling with who, what the feelings are, what arises, and you go deeper into your being empathic, your specific situations that are arising, you start to process, you're going to be able to flip this. You're going to be able to get stronger and stronger and stronger in your gifts. And a lot of times where you're triggered in your empathy, the things that really get you going, can actually be the same qualities polarized that are your highest, most intuitive gifts. Okay, so somebody else said that here. Empaths have a tendency or have the potential to be extraordinary healers. Okay, so that is special. All right, so I like to say if you're a feeler, you're a healer. Okay, that doesn't mean that you have to do that for your line of work. It could mean that you work in a dentist office or you're a garbage man. You can help and heal people no matter what you do. You don't have to stand up in a room and discuss it or be a specific spiritual teacher. You can heal people anywhere you are. But if you're tired, and you're drained, and you need to isolate yourself because we're not navigating this immense gift. Nobody gives us a book. We're not born and we have, all right, here's my empath survival guide, and yeah, all right, I'm good, and you're fully realized and actualized by 20 and you're healing the world. It doesn't happen that way. We have to figure this out one step at a time. And a lot of you already mentioned, when you come across it, it's this sense of relief. Oh, yeah, I'm not crazy. This is what I have. So then you need to take that and proceed into, how do I navigate? How do I protect myself, but not in a way where I'm isolating my gifts, right? So that's kind of what we're going to get into today, okay? Any questions so far? No. Okay. All right. So what is empathy? All right. We all know what empathy is. It's the ability to experience for yourself some or much of the pain of another. Okay. Have you guys felt that? You've taken on someone else's pain, right? Has anybody actually manifested something in their body that someone else had? Literally took somebody's condition. Has that ever happened? Gotten a headache, gotten sick, gotten something? That can happen too. It can be that extreme. You can literally pull somebody's illness into your body, okay? But a lot of times for many of us, it's picking up on their emotions and carrying it as our own and not feeling comfortable until they're in a better space. And that's a lot of responsibility, right? All right, so imagining the feelings of another who is in struggle. You watch TV a lot? You're witnessing things. Somebody crosses the street, somebody honks their horn, somebody's yelling. You have, just seeing something can really trigger you. It doesn't have to be your friend. It can be just something you witness on TV. A lot of empaths, the high spectrum empaths, cannot watch violent movies, cannot watch the news. They cannot do any of that. Yeah, exactly. Anything that shows abuse or violence or creates or stirs negativity just repels them, right? So this would be a good clue that you were highly empathetic. All right, so empathy takes courage, but it holds deep healing properties. We talked about this. So embracing your empathy and learning how to use it. It takes a lot of courage because it is easier. I know it feels crappy, but it's easier to isolate yourself. It's easier to say, I'm going to go in my room for 5 days. Please don't bother me. And when I'm recharged, I'm going to come back out, right? It's easier to do that. It doesn't feel any better, but it takes a lot of courage to say, all right, I've gotten this gift and I got to figure it out. I got to really go deep into it and process what I'm feeling, with who, when, where, why, and then I can start to navigate a shift. The time frame when that happens, it's up to you. It's up to the powers that be. You can't decide to be an empowered empath and expect it to happen overnight. We all know when we expect something to happen, that's the surest way that it's gonna not accelerate in your timeline, right? So you have to have a high level of compassion, especially if you've been beating yourself up because you have this high empathetic quality. A lot of people feel like there's something wrong with me, or what am I doing wrong that I can't control this? Like, am I doing something wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. You're just learning how to navigate a skill that the majority of the collective don't have, while you're trying to heal them at the same time. So that's very difficult to do. So empathy, I wanted to talk about the difference between empathy, sympathy, and compassion. Okay, so empathy is walking literally in another's shoes. I think we all have felt that, where you put yourself and you sit with somebody and you put yourself in their shoes. This can have immense healing qualities because that exchange of energy is what we like to call, in the spiritual community, if you want to label it, holding space. This is something that we talk about in the yoga world a lot. Has everyone heard of holding space for someone else? So it's where you're literally in a space and you're holding it in a way that's graceful, in a way that they can express themselves with no judgment, and you're feeling them. But then the key is to not have it be a cycle of them into you, them into you, them into you. But that holding space for someone else is immense healing on both sides, not just for the person that you're holding the space for, but for you as well. It's an energetic exchange. So holding that space is amazing, but as empaths, we want to hold it and take it, run with it, and then go to the next person and take their stuff. It's just naturally who we are. If you're familiar with archetypes, most empaths have the healer archetype. That's one of the main things, is they identify with that. So sympathy is feeling sorry for another's struggle, right? So we've all been sympathetic at times. It's kind of like, oh, I'm really sorry that happened, but I gotta go, I'm busy today, see ya, have fun with that. Like they kind of want to like move away from the situation rather than go deeply in it. They care and they express that, but they don't necessarily want to fix you, okay? Compassion is translating empathy into action, okay? And this is where we want to go being an empath. We want to be able to hold the space for someone else, recognize that there's an issue, and instead of pulling their energy on as our own, as the point of attraction, is instead saying, all right, I see this person is struggling, and I think if I made them a meal, it might be really good for them. Or maybe if I walk their dog because I know she just broke her leg and she's not feeling well. So taking your empathy and translating it into action, okay? Instead of pulling it, trying to transmute it, and then having to recharge for days because it's not yours to really take, right? Empaths are extraordinary people. They really are. And I think that they're rare. And again, it's a gift. I just want you all to know again that this is a very high level gift. And when we learn better how to navigate with these energies and more people understand what empathy is, because a lot of people will think we're crazy. What's wrong with you? Are you depressed? Do you have anxiety? Let me try to put a diagnosis to what is going on with you. Maybe you're bipolar, maybe you're this, maybe you're that. They want to diagnose you with something. That's what the medical world does. They want to diagnose you. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not the judge of recognizing if someone does need medication or not need medication. But as an empath, you are so sensitive that if something is out of alignment with your soul, your body's going to tell you right away. It's going to tell you right away. And then what you need to do is decide if whether you're going to listen and try to get into better alignment or you're going to resist it. And if you're resisting what your body is telling you, let the struggle begin. Let the exhaustion begin. Let things begin where you have to isolate yourself so you can just recharge, okay? All of this stuff that I talk about, I always say this in my workshops, it's stuff I've experienced myself. I tend to do my workshops off of personal experience, and if this resonates with you, awesome. If something I say does not resonate with you, please just let it go, okay? All right, so now we're gonna get into just all the qualities of being an empath, okay? I'm not gonna spend a ton of time on this, although it looks like a ton of information, because it is a lot, but a lot of us have already talked about some of our qualities. As I was writing this down and thinking about this, a few of them really made me laugh because I thought, my gosh, like that is so me. Even now, I've developed these skills, but it's just, it almost makes you giggle. Okay, so highly sensitive to people, places, foods, and energy, right? Taking on one's energy as their own. We sometimes tend to be shy and introverted as well. So maybe you're labeled as being shy or introverted. I like to think of myself as I can be an extrovert at times, but I definitely resonate more with being an introvert. It's like certain situations, like right now, I feel really comfortable because I'm in alignment, I'm in my element, but if I'm not in my element, I'm like hiding in the back. I've got my car out front ready to bolt at any time, so it depends if whether I'm in alignment or not really is a huge factor. Again, highly intuitive. It's something that we brought up too. Having this intuition is also something that needs to be developed. I always say to people that intuition is not a gift, it's a skill. We all have the ability to be intuitive. It's a matter of if you're going to listen to it when the information arises. So Caroline Myss is someone who I love and I follow a lot, if you know who that is. And she always says that having an intuitive hit, getting a little piece or snippet of intuitive information is a download. She calls it a download. And she said, imagine if you're sending mail. You can send it through email, which you'll get there in a second, or you can send it through the mail, the postal service, and it'll take a couple days, right? So if you were to send something through the postal service and it takes a few days, that's like having a thought. It's like taking the time to kind of wrap your head around a certain concept. When you have an intuitive hit, it's an email. Bam, it's there. Right? That's how you know that's your intuition. A lot of people relate it as a gut reaction to, I feel it in my gut, right? So your gut's your second brain. So that's if you feel something immediately, and it might not even be in your line of thought at that moment, that is your intuition. And what happens is the more you trust that intuition or that download in the moment, the more intuitive hits you'll get. Right? But our how we justify, or if we're not really developing the skill of the intuition, is sometimes we hear something that we're not really ready to hear. okay? Or we feel something that we're really not ready to hear. Caroline uses the example of, having this gut feeling that her son was taking drugs, and she felt it, but she kept discounting it. And he would come home late, and he seemed a little spacey, and she would say, well, he's probably just tired from a long day work. She kept making excuses as to why it couldn't be, even though her heart and her gut was telling her, I think he might have a drug problem, right? And then years down the road, or months down the road, she realizes that, oh yeah, he did indeed have a drug problem. But when she got the intuitive hit, the fear was too great. She wasn't ready to deal with it. So she made excuse after excuse after excuse as to why he wasn't, because she wasn't ready to deal with it, right? So when you get an intuitive hit, listen to it. Okay, even if it doesn't make total sense to you, even if it's something you don't want to hear, even if it's something that you don't believe to be true, start to develop that skill and start to just let it hold space for the thought, right? You don't have to act on it. You don't have to get an intuitive hit and say, oh my God, Frankie's cheating on Betty next door. I can feel it. You don't have to verbalize it right away. People are going to think you're nuts. But just sit with it, hold space with it, right? Because one thing that when we start to develop the intuitive skills, one thing that happens is, yeah, we can get a little big in our britches sometimes, right? We're like, oh yeah, I think I'm intuitive now, right? I'm going to a little psychic shop down the street, right? Like, you got to pump the brakes, and you got to start to develop what it is you're getting, why it is you're getting it, and be really humble about it. Okay. When I do my workshops and how I label, I don't like labels. I don't like rules for those of you who don't know me. But I don't label myself as a psychic intuitive healer, right? I don't like that. It holds a lot of expectation, and there's just, those words hold a lot of projection, right? I don't want that responsibility. Right? It took me a long time to just figure out how am I gonna tell people what I do, right? Because I think what we do in this sort of light worker community, or the work that we do here as healers, is broad. It's hard to label it as one thing. You have to just go with the flow of this energy, and of course people need to know what you do, but be cautious of how you start to get into this, because you can actually start to take it into a different, how do I want to say this? A different program, okay? So you can start to get really deep into something like, and I'm not judging any of this, I'm just using this as an example, tarot, or any sort of tools. You can just really go deep into one thing, and yeah, that'll help you. It'll help you on your journey to figure it out and play with it. But it's not something that you need to rely on to figure out what your day's going to be like, right? It's just a tool. It's for fun, it's a tool, but everything you need to be an exceptional healer is already within you, okay? All of the other stuff is to help you develop it, but once you start relying on that stuff, you're putting the power outside of yourself. That's what you're doing. And you're saying, well, if I read my tarot today, or my tarot, and it's going to tell me how my day is, you know how your day, you have that power. And as an empath, you have to take your power back. That's one thing that's very, very important, because when you start to give your power away, your skills won't be developed. And in the long and short of things, we're all here on this earth, carnated at this time, to learn how to love and to learn how to really experience unconditional love, right? So we have to just, start step by step. All right, let's move on. So we've got empathy, sympathy, and compassion, right? Taking your empathy into action. Then we got into these. All right, I want to talk about intuition a little bit deeper. Some of you guys know these terms. Some of you guys may not know these terms. Clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, claircognizant. Anybody? We know these words? Okay, so your intuition holds. You have specific skills. Some people are highly, highly intuitive, and they can embody all of these skills at the same time. You can embody these skills at different times. You may say, you know what, me particularly, I'm very clairaudient. Like, you may have one particular skill. So a little deeper into intuition, a clairvoyant is a knowing or perceived notion of future events and beyond the normal senses, okay? So this is where we experience things like telepathy. Some people are labeled as visionaries. They can kind of see in the future. Psychic is a term that's often used with being a clairvoyant. So I'm sure you heard that phrase before. So the ability to see what's going to happen or predict something that's going to happen in the future. And there are people who do this, and they do it really well. Again, when you think of a psychic, right, all of us have a different impression in our mind of what a psychic is or isn't. Some validated, some not. That's why I tend to not use labels, because then what is somebody thinking of me if I label myself a psychic? Right? So just being cautious of how you label yourself. Clairaudience is a clear hearing. These people tend to pick up on really high-pitched sounds. They tend to hear different things in music. Sometimes these people hear voices that other people don't hear. Beyond the normal means. So sometimes we do this, but this is all extra sensory. Right? So also being an empath, right now I've seen in the medical community it being diagnosed as, I think they're calling it sensory perception disorder or something like that. Did you guys ever hear about this?
Sounds like it could be, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's so right now in the medical community, they're labeling this as high sensory perception or high sensory processing disorder or something like that. They're literally calling it a disorder, which is such an injustice because this is such a gift. But again, I have nothing against science. Science helped to save my life, but they always want to, it needs to be a pathology for them. Like everything needs to have a diagnosis. And, to me, that is a big injustice because this is a gift. And when you're told it's a disorder, it really takes on another means. And then a lot of times we start to medicate then. And some people need medication. I take medication every day for my transplant. I'm not against medication. But when we're medicating an empath, the world's in trouble. It's in trouble, okay? All right, so clairsentience, clear sensing, the ability to feel the past, present, and future, emotional states of others and yourself, again, beyond the normal senses. So, yeah, so this one is you just know, you have that sense. You know if you resonate as a clairaudient or a clairvoyant or a clairsentient, you feel that. Like, what is your main gift? Do you sense other things? Do you hear things? Do you see things? So can anyone resonate with any of this stuff? A little bit? Okay. So, and this, you might not resonate with this right now because you may be at a different space with your, empathetic skills. But empathy and intuition, make no mistake, go hand in hand. Okay? There's not an empath who's not intuitive. That's my opinion, but I'm pretty strong in that conviction. Okay, so claircognizance is the ability to acquire psychic knowledge without a remembrance of gaining the information. Intrinsic information comes to mind, kind of out of the blue, about an event, a person, a place. So has anyone ever felt that? Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on. So empaths welcome isolation and alone time, space to recharge and process. Yeah. Like a lot, more than normal, right? You've got like your own space, and this is a big tool to help you guys in your process of empowering yourself as an empath, is to allow yourself that time and to give yourself permission to exit situations, as I said before, if you need to. There's been many times where, not so much recently, and I think this has to do with alignment, but in the past where I could be out to dinner, having a lovely time in a restaurant, okay? Just ordered dinner, I'm with friends that I feel safe with, we're in the middle of a restaurant, all of a sudden something comes over me and I feel anxious, okay? And I say to myself, all right, am I gonna have a panic attack? Like what just happened? I don't even know what just happened, everything's great. And immediately I'll say, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. Right? It's just, and what that is me picking up on something else. It doesn't have to be something in my immediate conversation. It could be the conversation next door. It could be an energy that just walked in. But that used to be very common for me, where I could be somewhere and all of a sudden, out of the blue, say, I need to get out of here. Hence why empaths tend to take their car almost anywhere and everywhere, especially if you go to a party or event. You're like, no, I'll drive myself, like I need to go somewhere afterwards, I think, but you really just want to have that as an escape route in case like you got to bolt for some reason. So that one always makes me laugh because that's so me, and people are like, why did you drive your car for? Why don't you just drive with us? Like we're all 5 of us are going together. I'm like, no, I'm good. And it's weird too because because it can be people that you love and that you're really comfortable with. There's no rhyme, reason, or explanation sometimes. It's just you want that security to do what you need to do to stay in alignment, and that's actually a really beautiful thing. All right, so what do we got here? Have a need to be of assistance and heal others. Do you guys feel that? Do you feel like you like to be of assistance? Yeah, can you guys relate with that kind of healer archetype? All of you? Yeah, okay, good. All right, so can be prone to panic attacks, anxiety, and depression. This is huge, 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 okay? I dealt with panic disorder a number of years ago, and at that specific time, I did require some medication. And this was before my first transplant. And my main fear at that time was my empathy, but it also was a fear of death because I was really, really sick at the time. And I had an extreme fear of death. And I couldn't calm down. I just wasn't ready to die. So, I needed a little bit of assistance. But as I progressed, I was able to navigate that and change that and look back at it and process it and see where it was coming from. And, it's probably been close to 9 years that I've really had any situations like that. But I will say this, that if I put myself in a situation where I'm out of alignment, or I feel it out of alignment that I can't get out of, I will feel, it's almost like my personality says to me, and this will sound maybe bipolar, I'll get into this later, it's not, but my personality will present, you're feeling uncomfortable right now, okay? Do you want to panic, or do you want to move? Like, do you want to go into a full-blown panic attack, or do you want to move yourself out of the situation and try to find somewhere where you can go to find comfort and ease? So now, instead, I've gone so deep into my own personal process that it's almost like I feel a choice, right? But now, at this part of my journey, currently, I am so cautious of, I know myself, right? I know what's going to trigger me. I know what's not. I don't even go back into the things that I know that drive me crazy. I just can't anymore. It halts my progress as a healer, so to speak. If I am in panic and I am in isolation, how can I run a business and how can I help if I'm not available? Right? So that was a great, I talked about this in my other workshops, one of my greatest lessons was when I was probably about 20 years old, and when I was first diagnosed with lupus, the autoimmune disease. And I was seeing a shaman, because at that time I was in the program of seeing every healer possible to try to help me and fix me. And I was seeing a shaman at the time, and she said, Stephanie, I can tell. You want to be a healer, right? And I said, yes, how'd you know? Right? You could just see it beaming from me. Like my heart was wide open. I was just giving it all out there. And she said, you're not going to be a healer if you're dead. That's exactly what she said to me. And as a 20-year-old, I thought to myself, oh, that was harsh. Like, oh my God. But she's absolutely true. And as my life progressed, I realized if I don't learn how to navigate this, I'm not going to be here to help anybody. So far as my particular illnesses, right, I look at it now from the perspective of, I don't necessarily say it's genetic, although, maybe there were genetic things, but this is my personal view. I say, I manifested this for the growth of my own soul. I manifested this so I could learn something, right? And in that sense, I feel like I'm taking responsibility and I'm taking my power back, rather than saying, why did this happen to me? Who in my family had, instead of putting it out to everybody else, I feel like I then take my power back and I'm responsible for it as long as I continue to grow and to process why it happened, so I make sure that it doesn't happen again. So we got our clairs, clairvoyant, audient, sentient, cognizant, and again, some people are so intuitive where it is very difficult for them to be around people because they are literally picking up on everybody's everything in addition to yours, and it's overwhelming. It's really overwhelming depending where you are on the spectrum. All right, so we talked about the isolation, the recharge and process, have a need to be of assistance, we talked about that, can be prone to panic attacks, talked about that, and also be misdiagnosed, CF, fibro, agoraphobia, exhaustion. Severe exhaustion is a really, really common trait, severe exhaustion. And then I told you this already, that science often wants to pathologize everything and call it a disorder. Sensory processing disorder is what it's called there. Like variety and tend not to like routine. Does this resonate with anybody? I hate going to the same place twice. I'm like, I need something new. I need some new energy. Yes, I will go to a restaurant that I really like, but for me, I love new things and I don't like routine. Does this resonate with you guys at all?
Yes, so much.
Some people like routine, but a lot of empaths, they don't like the idea of routine. Likes to be unique, doesn't like to follow the crowd. Public places can be extremely overwhelming, right? So like as a kid, I'm like, I'm different and I need to stick out, like 2 different color socks. Like I just wanted to be unique. I didn't want to be like everybody else. I didn't want to follow the crowd. Made me sick. Didn't want to do it. Still don't want to do it. Like breaking rules, like doing things my own way. The fastest way to get me to break a rule is to tell me what not to do. You tell me not to do something, I'm like a child. I immediately want to do the opposite, right? I want to prove something. Do you guys resonate with that one at all? You like to be unique, different? Okay. We talked about this. Watching violence, tragedy, or cruelty on TV can be really overwhelming. Really overwhelming. I haven't had a TV in a couple of years. I try to stay, in tune with everything that's happening, but how many people do you know nowadays who just keep on CNN or the news and all that's coming out of them, it's just, they're filtering in this negativity and that's all you hear. The last year has been really profound here in the United States since the election, since everything happened. It seems like, even the brightest and most radiant light workers are losing their shit, right? And this is something that I talked about before, was that the planet is in desperate need of somebody to hold some space. And if you're going into that negativity and consuming news and talking about all of the negative things, who's holding the light? Like, who's holding the light? So I've really decided that I wanted to hold the light, so I disconnected from a lot. I tend to not get too involved in politics, not because I don't care about what's going on. I care deeply about what's going on, but I universally care about what's going on. And we all have different rules. Some people like to get out there and protest. Some people like to be on the ground. I like to be in the sky. That's just part of who I am. So I like to hold space and keep myself in good alignment so I can hold space for other people. When they're losing their marbles, I can say, we got this. Let's stay positive. Let's not go into that crap. But if you guys, you're on Facebook at all, I can't tell you how many people I've heard say, do you know how many friends I had to unfriend from Facebook because of the election? I mean, it was crazy. It's crazy. So me personally, I've disconnected from a lot of that because I want to hold the light, not because I want to be ignorant. Will I go out and protest? Heck yeah. But I'm doing this daily to try to keep the light within me so I can hold that space to keep the light and show someone else the light that they need to come back to if they're lost. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, here. Oh, this is another one. Digestive disorders, lower back issues, solar plex issues, which are the seat of the emotions. A lot of digestive issues for empaths. Does that resonate at all? Okay, so we've got Crohn's, colitis, IBS, gas. I've had so much gas in my 20s that I can't even tell you. It's just, I literally wasn't digesting things properly. And this all has to do with the solar plexus chakra, if you know the chakras in the body. So the chakras are the energetic mapping in the body. And the third chakra is a very powerful chakra. It's where you hold your personal power. It's where you don't compromise yourself for others, where you hold the space for your own health and wellness. This is really, really important. If you're disempowered, right? Even as an empath, if you're disempowered, you have a lot of solar plex issues and low back issues. A lot of times the midsection gets very collapsed and it's like almost like a, you feel your limbs, you feel your arms, you feel your physical body, but there's like, you don't know what's going on in here. Like you don't really associate with anything that's going on in here. So digestion can be a big issue. Oh, this is a good one too. Often others feel the need to spill or offload all of their information onto you. Yeah, you're a psychologist and a psychiatrist, right? So this has happened to me since I've been a child, right? Again, somebody mentioned that I think it was you, that everybody comes to you and you're the peacemaker of everything. That's a lot of responsibility. Right? And sometimes it's your parents. Sometimes it's people that are kind of, you'd think would be holding that space as an authority figure or somebody to help keep the peace, and it comes down on somebody else. And it tends to be one person in the family. There's like this one person who just takes everyone's shit. Willingly almost too, right? Do you guys resonate with any of this? Yeah, okay. All right. We can be drawn towards holistic therapies and metaphysical sciences, right? We talked about that a lot, right? So again, these are tools to help you deal with being an empath. And these are light worker tools, okay? So one thing that I want to get into really quickly is this idea of polarity, of light and dark, okay? So in the middle is integration and harmony, okay, on this scale. So you've got light and dark, sun and moon, however you want to reference this pole. And in the middle is harmony, it's unification, okay? And what I did, because I had a dysfunctional childhood, I don't know if any of you guys had a little bit of a dysfunctional childhood. I had a dysfunctional childhood. So when I found yoga, okay, I was 19 when I found yoga. I thought it was the bee's knees. I was like, oh my God, I've never felt so good in my life than I do after I leave my mat space. And I became addicted to yoga because it felt great, right? So yoga is very much in the light, right? Heroin, very much in the dark. Doing the same thing, trying to feel good, trying to bypass your emotions to feel good, right? So you know, do yoga. Now, these are extreme poles, right? I'm not encouraging, you know, but think about heroin. It's someone escaping reality to feel good. Same thing I was doing on my yoga mat, right? Yes, yoga's healthier, obviously, right? And it's good. But are you coming into integration between the shadow and the light with what you need to do in your life? So when I became addicted to yoga, I realized there was other things out there that I really liked, right? So I started seeing all sorts of teachers and spiritual guides and exploring all this really wonderful stuff. And if any of you have ever been into my apartment, I'm not living anywhere right now, but my past apartment, I still love all that stuff, right? I've got feathers and crystals and sage sticks and dream catchers, and like, I love all of that beautiful metaphysical holistic stuff. I love it, right? You may even come over and I'll read your tarot. We'll do, like, I love all that stuff. But what I did in my early years was rely on it to find my balance, okay? And I felt like, oh my God, if I can't get on my yoga mat, I'm not feeling whole. If I can't have all my things outside of myself, I can't feel whole, right? And it took me a long time to realize that what I actually was doing was spiritually bypassing, okay? So I was leaving my family dynamic, which was very negative. And through the yoga that I found, I polarized in the opposite direction. I could have floated away at any time. I was so up in the clouds, love and light, spiritual everything. I loved it. It made me feel so great. And I don't condone any of it. It's so beautiful. But when it comes to integration, you have to learn to apply and process the shadow side. It's just part of it. And it's going to be part of it if you're in the world of yoga, okay? Because there's highs that happen in yoga. There's highs that happen in other things that you do. You guys were just saying that. You get a high from it, right? Just like you can get a high from drugs, right? So we got to integrate. So again, spiritual community, that's my jam. I love it. But I had to go deeper. When I really started to become fully authentic and develop my skills, I had to go deeper. I just wasn't, Stephanie the yogi, I loved green juice. I was a vegan for 10 years. I did all that stuff. None of it helped me deal with, so to speak, the shadow sides, other than me just going into the shit. Drawn to seek knowledge, information, and truth.
Oh, yeah.
An empath. Oh my God, I love the truth. Oh, I love it. I remember when I first saw, there was a span of time where I got really big into conspiracy theories. There's more out there than we're told. Oh my gosh, right? There's so much more out there than we're told. A lot of stuff is hidden from us. There's a lot of darkness that's hidden from us. There really is. So for me, I love seeking truth. There's some really beautiful young individuals, and I talk about millennials a lot. I don't know if any of you guys have heard me talk about millennials, and even the younger generation. I've heard certain people, not all people, who tend to be maybe ranging between 50 and 70, really talk down about the younger generation. And I will say this, that I do a ton of YouTube watching because I don't have TV and I like to learn. So I find these really great teachers, guides, gurus, spiritual teachers, and I just watch them all the time and learn. I would say more than half of them are under the age of 30. And these people are blowing my mind. There is this guy I'm watching right now. Oh, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but I'll get it to you guys if you want it. And I think he started his YouTube channel when he was 21 or 22. And I think he's now maybe 27, 28. And I'm watching his videos when he first started as a 21-year-old. And I'm going to be 41. And I'm thinking to myself, holy God, like I could not have processed this information like yesterday. Here this guy is, he's 21, and he's blowing my socks off with his level of consciousness and him being awake. So I think there is this shift happening in the younger generation. And I've even seen children who are really blowing my mind. This one here, Allie, yeah. The level of consciousness and awareness and truth, and like I'm not going to adhere to the bullshit. I'm not subscribing to that anymore. It's like they see it very clearly. But I think age can be a part of it because we're templated from such an early age with what our parents taught us and our parents' parents taught us. And the older the generations go back, I think the more rigid the belief system. Okay, so when you start to seek truth, you have to challenge your belief systems. Okay, and this is something that happened to me several years ago, and it was when I had that spiritual awakening that some of you guys know about it, where I had specific belief systems, and all of a sudden everything was challenged. I started to realize, like, wow, I'm in a heavy belief system. Some of them seem positive, right? But it's like when you are so dead set on something, that's a belief system, right? And when you're unwilling to shift at any moment and evolve, you're stuck. You're stuck in your belief system no matter what it is. So you have to be willing to step outside of, you can have a belief system, but to step outside of it and say at any moment, this belief system might collapse, right? One thing that I hear a lot of times, which it always drove me crazy, was this expectation from your family lineage in regards to personality, disease, disorder, that kind of stuff. So an example, I heard this is a true story. I was at a dinner with some friends, and this one woman said, I just know I'm gonna get breast cancer. My mom had breast cancer, my grandmother had breast cancer, and I'm just like waiting for it to happen. And I'm like, you know, like as an empath who like knows like law of attraction and energy, I'm like, why would you put that out there? That's so crazy to me, right? But people do that too. Oh, I'm this way because my whole family's this way, or I do this because that's how I was taught. That's a self-limiting belief system, and you've put yourself in a box. And when you're in a box, there's no evolution, there's no growth, there's no evolution, right? You're not evolving. You've said, this is what I believe in, here's my box, and you know, maybe I like this box, but I'm not seeing the entirety of everything. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. All right, empaths are free spirits. We love adventure, nature, animals, and new things, right? Empaths love animals and nature, and it's one of the best healing tools for us. When you're feeling out of alignment, getting outside into nature is so extremely grounding and healing, okay? Really works the root chakra, which is survival skills, safety, security, comfort, something that an empath needs when you're constantly feeling everybody else's stuff. So you guys all love animals? Some empaths who are very in tune with animals can communicate with animals. As an empath and as an intuitive and as a light worker or whatever it is that you're specifically doing, you're not going to be accepted by everybody. And people are going to say things because they just don't understand. And what we don't want empaths to do is go in the closet. We don't want to hide these gifts and skills. We don't want to feel shy to say, hey, guess what? I've just had this wonderful animal communication. Like, it's the most freeing thing to be yourself. But when you're around a lot of people who just don't quite get it, you feel sometimes uncomfortable to be yourself until you get that full empowerment to be yourself and say, you know what? I don't care that you don't believe me. This is how it is. This is how it is, right? Maybe at that point you get some new friends. You know, I mean, that's happened to me. I've had to shift and transform the people I'm with because I don't want to be constantly put down. I don't want to be constantly telling people they think I'm nuts or I've lost it or I'm this or I'm that or the other thing, or maybe I should do this because then I won't want to go in my room and recharge. And I don't need all that, right? I have work to do here. right? So what I've had to do is rearrange some things in my life. And the people who relied on me, which was a lot of people because I'm an empath, they didn't like that very much when I started to take my power back. They didn't like that at all, right? So sometimes people can become like parasitical, like a parasite on you. And you, as an empath, are a narcissist dream. You're a dream. You're a dream to them, okay? Because you're their energy. You're their fuel. You're their love and light. And I want to talk about narcissists here. First of all, it's not rocket science to know that empaths and narcissists are very attracted to each other. It's a very common relationship. Not always, but it's a very common pair. You guys get that? Have you ever been attracted to a narcissist? Yeah? Okay. Okay. That's it at all, whoever just said that. All right. So as an empath, first we bring awareness to the fact that we are an empath and that it's a gift. All right. I'm going to get into narcissists here in a second. So we already talked about that. You have to, number one, first and foremost, as an empath, you have to recognize it, acknowledge it, and own it. This is really important. Again, if you hide that you're an empath, you're not owning it. You're already disempowering yourself. Okay? Again, you might say, but yeah, you know, like my friend thinks it's really weird when I tell them what's going to happen tomorrow in the world, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing this. If that were me, I would, I have no problem now saying you might want to think about getting a new friend. You know, I mean, I always tell people I'm a recovering perfectionist and people pleaser. Back in the day, which was like 2 years ago, past life, I tried so hard to please everybody, and I hated when people didn't like me, and I thought it was my fault, and what am I doing wrong that this asshole doesn't like me? No, they're just an asshole. Like, I wasn't doing anything wrong, right? But as an empath, you need to prove to them something, right? You need to say, well, let me just keep trying to like prove to them that I'm an awesome person and that I really mean well and I'm leading with my heart. And they're like feeding off of you, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse, and you guys jump on a hamster wheel together, and that's real fun, right? It just gets nowhere, right? And you're trying and giving more until it gets to the point where you're like, I can't even walk anymore. I am so tired. I have no energy, or I've developed a condition, right? And then you're just completely depleted. You're completely depleted. And then you go into shutdown, like a computer.
And they're very good at taking care of you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of codependency between a narcissist and an empath. They need each other, but they're feeding dysfunction, right? So yeah. I do want to say, we all know what a narcissist is. Yeah, okay. An asshole. No, just kidding. No. I don't want to say that because I do want to bring a little, I want to process the word narcissist just a little bit deeper. A narcissist can come across as extremely arrogant and self-centered and all of these lovely emotions that we know as a narcissist. And that is true. But I do want to go deeper into that truth. A narcissist also feels extremely deeply. That's why you guys are attracted to each other, to the point of being extremely overwhelmed, okay? So they feel very deeply, but they have no idea how to navigate it, and they become an asshole. That's what happens, because they feel and they don't know what to do with it. Whereas an empath says, I feel and I'm opening my heart, let me fix you and everybody else around. So they're actually way more similar than we might actually think, okay? Because the narcissist gets a bad rap. Yeah, I don't like a narcissist next to just like you guys don't. But it is true that they also feel very, very, very deeply. They just have no idea how to navigate it, and you want to fix it, right? Okay, let's see what else we have here about the narcissist. Okay, yeah, so I have here, due to the inability to own their deeper, darker sides, a narcissist, of their soul, this presents as extreme selfishness, arrogance, and abusiveness. Okay, so they've got a deeper, darker side that they're not owning, and it's coming out as being an asshole because they're not processing what's really wrong in their life and where they're out of alignment. You see where they're out of alignment, and you're like, if you would just do this, and if you would just change this, and why don't you do this? Because you're seeing clearly as day exactly that's coming through them, and that pisses them off even more. And then you're on the hamster wheel. So, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Narcissists can be very, very jealous of empaths. Empaths have and lead with an open heart, right? So that's another reason why narcissists can be so abusive to an empath, is because there's a deep jealousy. They don't know how to lead with their heart. They don't know how to get out of the overwhelm in the thought process in the brain to go into their heart. Empath is an open book. Their heart's wide open all the time until they're exhausted and they go on to the shutdown mode. So sometimes there can be some hidden jealousy. And again, that comes out and manifests as other negative emotions, if that makes any sense. Yeah, that's exactly what I have here. Very often the root cause of this relationship is the head and the heart imbalance, right? So we talked about this last time, Maggie, was cognitive dissonance. Okay, so this is really powerful. I actually wrote down the exact definition here. Has anyone heard of cognitive dissonance? Yeah, okay, so in psychology, it's the mental discomfort or psychological stress, doggy, experienced by a person who simultaneously holds two or more contradicting belief systems or values. Okay, I'm going to read that again. Cognitive dissonance. In the field of psychology, it's the mental discomfort or psychological stress experienced by a person who simultaneously holds two or more contradicting beliefs, ideas, or values. Okay, so head and heart. This is the battle. This is the narcissist and the empath. One leads with their head, one leads with their heart. They both want balance. They both want integration. They both want unity, but they don't know how to do it. It's very difficult for an empath and a narcissist to have a healthy relationship. Have I seen them polarize? Yes, I have seen them polarize, but it takes a lot of work and it's very uncomfortable. But it can be done. It can be done for sure. So the head and the heart struggle. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
How can it possibly be done if we're the ones that keep giving and giving and giving and they don't even understand what's wrong?
Right. So I've seen, again, I think it's rare. I do think it's rare. I think that it takes somebody else outside of that dynamic to help, right? To heal, to help. And then maybe what I've seen is a pair come back together after they separated and healed through other means and methods and came back to heal. It is very, very rare. And I think that a separation has to happen for even the possibility, because when they're on that wheel, they can't see any other way. Relationships are really interesting and they're really complex. It doesn't matter if you're 20 years old or you're 80 years old. It doesn't matter if the relationship is with your brother, your sister, your mother, your spouse, or the cat down the road. Relationships are complex. They're hard at any age. They're difficult, okay? And you knowing yourself and being an empowered soul is the only, sure way for you to stay in your personal power, is to really know yourself, know what resonates with you. So what resonates with you is coming from your heart space. How do you know what resonates with you? Because it feels good in your heart space. You're not thinking about it, you feel it, right? Empaths have a tendency to always speak in feeling. Right? So somebody like a narcissist or maybe a normal person might say, well, I think this, I think we could do this. And an empath will say, I really feel like that's what they tend to do. They feel their thoughts. It's really true. They feel their thoughts. So this head and heart, that's what I think of when I think of cognitive dissonance, is the head and the heart struggle. And this is exactly where we're at right now in society, is that some people are just in their rigid belief systems that are outdated, no longer working, causing damage, but they are holding on with an iron grip because they cannot let go of that belief system. And then there's another generation who's saying, you know what? Yeah, I'm awakening to this crap and this untruth and what I've been fed and told, and I want a healthy, balanced way. I don't want to do it your way because it hasn't worked for you. You're miserable. I want to find something that works for me, something that works for the collective, something where we're all benefiting and growing, not just me, right? It's just not about me and money and what I'm doing. It's about collectively evolving. Again, it doesn't take a genius to know that the world is in bad shape. Right? We've got a lot of things happening that's not necessarily, we're moving in a direction where we could use little help, to say the least. So what we can do is start by getting in our own personal alignment, okay? So this is the thing, and this is where really I'm trying to inspire you guys, is to say, it's great to do things out in the world. It is great to do things in the world. But you can go to a million, things outside of yourself and protests and do things for other people left and right. And if you go home and you're unhappy and you're not in alignment and you're not in harmony, it's not progress. It needs to start with you. You need to get into good alignment. Empaths also can fake things pretty well at times. Okay, so sometimes we develop a skill of pretending that everything is a certain way. Again, I want to inspire you guys embracing your authenticity and really honoring what resonates with you, even if nobody understands, right? If nobody gets what you're doing, or they're in disharmony with it or disagreement, if you had to cut somebody out of your life, I encourage you to have that bravery and faith and trust and knowing that you can follow with your heart. And when I went through my spiritual awakening, I told most of you guys, or the guys that were here for that particular workshop, that I went into isolation first. That's what happened. So I also had a long-term, like you, a marriage and a separation. And I just kind of shut down and went into isolation. And in that moment, I was in isolation for about a year. And in that isolation, I had made some really wild decisions, okay, for those of you who don't know this story. But I made a lot of changes 2 years ago after a spiritual awakening, and I had to isolate myself to figure out what I was doing and where I was and what was happening to me. I was ostracized by a lot of my family, which was mostly dysfunctional relationships anyhow, to be quite honest with you. But the choices that I had made had really pissed off some people in my life, and you guys can resonate with that if you've ever followed your heart and not followed the collective. And I could have went back. I could have said, you know what, like maybe I should just go back and do what everybody says I should do, or what am I doing? That's thought. That was all thought. Whenever I took myself out of leading with my heart, I recognized immediately that I was just ruminating in thought, and it felt very confusing, very muddied, very cluttered, very inauthentic, right? So in that year of isolation, I had many people, I cut out many people. They were giving me heck, vice versa. But I had two people, I think it was two, possibly three, who came up to me and said, Stephanie, I don't know what the hell you're doing here. Like you're like deconstructing your whole life, and you're making a lot of changes that seem really crazy to me, but I got your back. I trust you. I know that you lead with your heart. And I said to them, you can be in my circle right now, but everybody else who wasn't supportive, I had to just cut them out until I gathered myself, until I recognized who I was and where I was going and what I needed to change and who I really wanted to be. And then at that point, when I did all that processing, I could invite the people back in who were healthy with me, with boundaries, right? And say, you know what, no more. I'm sorry. Our soul contract is done. I've learned what I'm meant to learn from you, and I love you. God bless you. The soul contract is done, right? And I believe that. I believe that we choose the family that we incarnate into. It's my firm belief, for our own soul's growth and evolution. And again, what is your other option, right? We don't have concrete, solid, documented knowledge like science tries to gather around spirituality, right? But we do know what resonates with us, and we do know what doesn't. And just because energy isn't tangibly seen in the naked eye right here in front of us, it's all around us. We're all in an energy exchange right here. You know what feels right and what doesn't, okay? When you're in your head, shit gets really confusing. You go back on thoughts and belief systems, you shift, you're confused. It's confusion, right? If you lead with your heart, there's no confusion. It's just there. It's just what is. It's just an inner knowing, and it's so beautiful and so powerful. Once you take that quantum leap into your heart space, out of your head, because there are many people on this planet who will never go into their heart space fully. They will be in their head the whole time, unfortunately, and they'll come back again and try again next time to learn how to love unconditionally, because that's the only reason why we're here. We're not here to make money and have wonderful accomplishments. We're here just to experience unconditional love, right? So if you live in your head and you ruminate, and you're about yourself and your ego and your power and making money, you'll come back again. Okay? And we have to hold space for those people like that in our lives because that was us in a past life, right? So when you start to recognize that, that's when you really start to embody unconditional love, is when you can look at somebody who is a narcissist or an asshole. Does anybody not like swearing? I'm sorry, because I've swore a couple times. Okay, it's only in these like really powerful workshops that I like to swear for some reason. But to recognize that you were once that asshole. Maybe not in this lifetime, maybe in this lifetime, right? Maybe a couple years ago, maybe last lifetime, or maybe 10 lifetimes ago. We've all experienced everything in all of our lifetimes. And depending on where you're at in your soul's process, will be contingent on your abilities and your skills and what, depending on what you've experienced. So if you are what's called an old soul, and it's funny because I heard somebody mention this, which I thought was kind of goofy. They said, have you ever heard anybody say, I'm a new soul? Like nobody ever says, I'm a new soul. It's always, I'm an old soul, right? Which it's a beautiful thing because there are old souls out there who've just been around the block. And I would probably guesstimate that most of us have been around the block a couple of times in here. But being around the block and having multiple lifetimes means that you've been a narcissist. You've been a killer. You've been a murderer. You've been a cheater. You've been a liar. You've been everything. That's how we experience, that's a full embodiment to be human, right? I'm not saying in this lifetime, but I'm saying in the lifetimes. You've been everything. You've been everything. So then when you're working towards what some people call enlightenment, right? Or being in this spiritual space where, enlightenment, let's call it, you can look at somebody who is an asshole, so to speak, and say, you know what? I recognize those emotions that's emanating from them. They are out of alignment with their soul's truth, and they're lost, and they can't see it. And instead of me reacting to them, which is just a childish way of dealing with behavior, because you're most likely reacting from your inner child then, right? Two adults arguing is just two children arguing. You're just arguing over your wounds, your woundology from your past is all you're doing. But you don't see it because you're in it. But yeah, so that's exactly, I just lost my train of thought there. What was I just saying right before that? Anyone?
Better on the block, well experienced.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's what working towards enlightenment is. First, I want to say this. Nobody's enlightened. If you're enlightened, here on this earth, if you're enlightened, you've transcended, okay? So that's in my belief what it is. If you're enlightened, there's no more lessons to be learned here. Yes, you can be, even healers and very skilled healers still can learn things, right? But if you've really fully enlightened yourself completely, most often you've transcended then, right? You've done all you've needed to do if you're in that space of full enlightenment. Yeah, and some of you know that. Some of you have witnessed somebody dying. And, they always say, I have a lot of people who work in the medical community who say that you die as you lived, okay? So if you're an asshole, you're gonna die. It's gonna be a rough death for you, right? If you were pleasant and you were forgiving and loving, your death might be a little bit more graceful. I don't know for fact that, but I've heard it from many medical professionals that you die as you lived. And if you've seen somebody who's lived a really somewhat graceful life, maybe you witnessed their death as almost something beautiful. Death is something we're all gonna face, unfortunately. We're all gonna die. And I think there's a lot of people who are really scared to death of death. I know a lot of people who are really scared to death of death. There's no struggle in death. There's no afterlife of struggle, right? That's the bliss. That's the bliss. It's literally, you're just transcending into another dimension. It's not something that's scary and, you're transcending into another dimension. Your soul is just transcending and your physical form is just gonna look different. Head and heart. I just wanna stress once more about that. There is a collective awakening happening right now. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. You could probably look it up. In 2000, I think we discussed it, I think it was 2012, 2011. When did the Mayan calendar end?
2012.
2012.
12.
Yeah.
21.
Yeah. So at that time, the energy on the planet started to actually shift. And I've talked also about the Schumann resonance a lot in my workshops, which is the influx of light getting significantly higher on the planet. And a lot of people are feeling this energy elevation. In people who are resistant to change and shift into their alignment, it's presenting as extreme anger and frustration and feelings of being stuck and manifestations of conditions, and it's an unpleasant stickiness, a sludge that these people are feeling when this influx of light is coming in, and it's trying to help us to get into better alignment. And when you're in resistance to where you need to go because you're so used to being safe and secure and where you were, even if it's a shitty situation, your body's going to tell you. It's going to tell you. There are people adjusting and acclimating to this light. These people are what we want to call as awakening, okay? And what is awakening? Has anybody heard of this? Do we kind of know what this is? Okay, so awakening is just being more conscious of all that is in truth, okay? So having a broader perspective of things, seeing things for what they really are, shifting out of the personal belief systems or the self-limiting belief systems that have been holding you back from your full potential. Some people are getting really interesting signs and synchronicities present in their life, and if you Google this, it's all over. 1111 is one of the major synchronicities and signs that people see when they're about to have an awakening. I have never heard of this. I had never heard of this before I experienced it myself, okay? I considered myself spiritual beforehand, but in 2015, God bless you. In 2015, when I had my ambush spiritual awakening, it happened very, very fast and very suddenly. I did start seeing things that I didn't really quite understand. And, part of me was like, oh my God, am I going nuts? Like, what's happening here? This is very, very strange. But then I also knew who I was as a soul. I knew that I was a metaphysical being and that I loved growing and evolving. And I just thought, all right, I asked for this shit. I gotta go with it and research it and just kind of figure out what's happening to me. There are some people who see 1111 a lot. Okay, that happened to me in 2015. It's just like, I wasn't trying. It's just like all of a sudden I recognized it. All of a sudden it was just everywhere. And I'm sure some of you guys have that with numbers, right? If you're into angels and there's angel numbers, 222, 333, 444, all sorts of correlations with numbers that mean something. But 1111 is the sign of awakening, okay? It's the sign that get ready. You're ready, and now we're gonna wake you up to a little bit different of a reality where you're in even better alignment than you could imagine. And this influx of light that's coming into the planet right now is creating this awakening, this phenomenon of awakening. So I discussed that a lot in my Raise Your Vibration workshop in great detail, and it's profound. And there's a lot of people experiencing this. There's a lot of people, I would say a mass amount of people who are on the verge of an awakening. They're on the verge. They're feeling something. And this is exactly what happened to me pre my awakening in 2015. It was 6 months leading up to the particular day that my awakening happened, where I started feeling slightly different. I started seeing things. I was seeing really amazing I took a photograph, maybe some of you guys remember, but I happened to look up in the sky one day and just snap a photo of what I thought looked like a really cool sky. And I looked at it later, and it was clear as day to me, a beautiful angel. And it was so, to me, Tina, do you ever see that picture? I was like, oh my God, that, I didn't even know it was there. I just took the picture. But really what happened to me that was undeniable was this knowing, this sense, something's gonna happen, right? And I remember I talk about this all the time. 6 months leading up to my awakening, I just felt this excitement just overcame me. And I started telling people, right? I started saying, something's gonna happen. I got really excited. And I remember there was somebody in my life that time that I kept saying that, there's something gonna happen. And I remember him saying one day, okay, what's gonna happen? I'm like, I don't know, but something's gonna happen. I can feel it. It was just a knowing. And I had no idea what was about to happen. But I feel that there are a lot of people who are on this verge of taking this quantum leap, this awakening. And the awakening is just taking you into your heart. That's all it's going to do. So it's going to show you what it's like to live from the heart space. In my heart space, I want to tell you what happened to me. Actually, I'm so glad that Tina's here tonight, because this is exactly the first time that it happened to me, was with a situation regarding Tina. So really very brief background about Tina. She's been practicing yoga with us for a very long time, and I witnessed her beautiful, graceful, intentional practice. And because I don't like rules, right, I came up to Tina one day and I said, Tina, I think you should be a teacher here. I said, I would be honored if you would grace us with your presence, because I've seen you develop into a gorgeous teacher. Now, you talk to a yoga school or yoga community, this isn't, you do your yoga teacher training, you do your YTT 200-hour with the Yoga Alliance. Fuck that shit. I'm sorry. Like, it's a way for them to make money, okay?
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So is it beneficial to go to do a yoga teacher training? I'm not going to say it's not. But this girl dedicated herself. She self-studied. She did it all on her own. She didn't just show up and pay lots of money and get it all in 2 weeks to be called a yoga teacher. She put in the work, and I witnessed it with my own eyes. So I thought to myself, all right, this is a little different. I'm going to ask a non-teacher, so to speak, to be a teacher at my space. But I felt it in my heart. And what happened was, the idea came over me. I think she was in class earlier that morning. And I went up to my husband at the time and I said, Chris, I think I'm going to ask Tina to be a teacher here, right? And, you know, Chris is a lovely, lovely man. And he immediately said, well, I don't know about that. Like, she's not a teacher. Like, the mind, right? The mind, you know? And I said, I immediately felt like I had hummingbirds in my chest. And I said, with a smile, like a freak, I said, I don't care what you think. I'm going to do it anyway. And at that moment, I felt my heart break open. And how I can explain it is that I felt so high in my heart. It felt just like this hummingbirds. And I felt like, and I was making this really bizarre kind of giggle laugh. And for a second, I wasn't sure what was happening. But I was like, whoo, like I just felt like I could just rise up. And it just felt so floaty and expansive in my chest. I didn't know I just thought, holy shit, I'm really happy. Like, I've never experienced this level of joy before. And that proceeded into what I now know as my heart opening, my heart awakening, heart center awakening, this is called. And this is happening all over. You're going to see it as the months go by. I'm sure of it, where more people are like, I don't know what's happened to me, but my chest just exploded and I'm happy, the happiest I've ever been. It's called a heart center awakening. We need it more than ever for people to go into the heart, and it's happening, right? So when that first happened with Tina, I wasn't quite sure exactly what happened, but I knew it was amazing. Well, it started to happen again. And then I started to process what's happening with, what's happening here with me. So I went to the trusty Google, my heart's, you type in crazy things when you don't know what's happening. And I immediately, because I was on this spiritual journey as well, I came across it pretty quickly. And there's thousands of people talking about this. And I thought to myself, as empaths, holy shit, I'm not crazy. Other people are feeling this sensation in their chest. And it feels amazing when you know that you're not alone. But then immediately I thought, how do I get back there? Like, that was so cool and so natural and so enlightening and gorgeous. Like, how do I get back there? So I recognized, I played this little science experiment with myself, which I like to do often. And I thought, all right, like, what do I have to do to get back there? And it took a little while, but it happened again. And I thought, all right, what just happened? It happened several more times after that. And for me personally, I'm not sure if every person who has a heart center awakening experiences this, but I recognized for me, it was either when I was in an important conversation where something needed to be taken into action, where something needed to be done, or I was in an interaction where, for me, let me sum it up by just saying, it was when either there was a discussion or an action where it was somewhere where I needed to go, where that was in alignment with all that is. That's what it felt like almost like God, or whatever you believe, the God of your own understanding, source, divine, whatever you believe in, was saying, there you go, kid, that's it, right? And he gave me that little like flutter in my chest. So that's how it resonated with me. And then I started to say, all right, now I know how to get there. But what's happening when I'm not there? Like, what's going on when I'm not in that heart space? Too much thinking. And I recognize that. And I'm still working on it. It's been, how long have you been teaching, Tina? 2 years. I'm still working on it, right? I'm getting better at it. I'm developing my skill, like I developed the skill of intuition. I'm developing this living in my heart space more. I think that me getting into the heart space was me working towards trying to be the most authentic person that I could and being of service. I think that's what helped me get into the heart space. But staying in the heart is harder, because you're around people who think a lot and people who judge a lot and a lot of rules and regulations. And me being a human being and not, obviously I'm not perfect. Sometimes I do think. But what happens is, like my intuition, this is really fascinating. When I started to develop the skill of intuition, I kept trusting, and then more information would come. And I liked that. I like to be intuitive. I like to be in touch with things and know what was happening and have that sense. When I didn't trust it, I wasn't getting any intuitive hits for a while, and I would kind of like say, all right, what did I do? Again, I overprocess. It's the same thing. I was just thinking too much then, as I'm thinking too much when I'm exiting the heart space, right? But what happens is, once you've traveled into the heart space one too many times, you recognize that, all right, I gotta be there. This is the right place for me to be. I feel in alignment. I'm helping. I'm energetic. I'm in alignment. I don't need to self-medicate to stay awake. I'm like this hummingbird, so to speak, of like creation, of all that is. I'm getting stuff done. I'm really manifesting things. Things are happening. When you go out of that and you're in self-doubt, self-pity, worry, stress, it's like that whole duality, or polarity, I should say, of you can only experience so much light by how much dark you've experienced. It's that whole kind of thing. So for me, it became more uncomfortable. And this sounds bipolar. And I haven't processed completely. I'm in the midst actually of working with somebody with medical conditions and this processing work that I'm doing, which is fascinating. But I've noticed that I've actually become almost at times manifesting this quality of bipolar. It's not me, so to speak. I've never been diagnosed with bipolar. But what's happening is that, as pleasant as it is to be in my heart space and lead with my heart, I'm not perfect. So sometimes I go back into the head and I don't feel that creation. I don't feel inspired. I don't feel the lightness and the radiant health. So the darker moments become darker, heavier. And then when I'm in the heart, they become greater because I want to move or integrate into this unified feel. So it is very like a bipolar sort of dynamic. And that's what I'm working on. I'm working on trying to continuously stay in my heart, because it's creation, manifestation, inspiration, health. And now it's to the point where I disconnect from love because it's not. And how I disconnect from love is because it's not going my way. It's not going fast enough. It's not presenting how I think it should present, right? And you get that kind of controlling element over how your life should look. When I pull away from love because it's not looking how I want it to look, I immediately feel shitty. Immediately. My belly gets all bound up. I get constipated. Like, I immediately start manifesting out of alignment. Whereas before, the time span might have been longer. I might not have recognized it so clearly. I might have gotten myself out of alignment without even recognizing it. And then several weeks or months down the road, I'm not really feeling that great kind of thing. But once you develop your consciousness, linear time knows no bounds. things start happening very, very, very quickly. So when you know what it's like to be in alignment, oh boy, do you know what it's like to be out of alignment real quick. And for me, I don't want to feel sick and tired and not well. So what do I have to do? I have to keep working to stay in my alignment and to stay in my heart. As an empath, that's exactly what we need to do. We lead with our heart. We need to stay in our heart so we can show other people what it's like to be in the heart, because people have no fucking clue how to be in their heart. They have no idea how to do it. They can't stay there. It's a big learning curve. But as empaths, you guys are going to get to that space first. You're going to develop that heart center awakening in that space first to help many people in the collective that are going to start or have already started this mass awakening, this mass wake up, this heart center, and they're not going to know what to do. Okay? So empaths are really needed right now. We're really needed to process where we're out of alignment so we can be of service and not be in our bedroom, right? Not be in our car, getting out of a situation. If that needs to happen, it needs to happen. But we are needed now more than ever because things are going to shift. And we need to hold that space. We need to have that gift available and accessible, because there's going to be masses and masses and masses of people who are going to drop into their heart space and they're going to have no clue what to do, right? Someone's getting wild up there. Any questions on that? Stay in your heart. Yeah, stay in your heart. You'll feel it, and it'll manifest in all of you guys differently. For me, I have a very big association with the medical field and science. So for me, I tend to manifest physical issues really, really quickly when I'm out of alignment, really quickly. Ironically, or not so ironically, kidneys. I've had 2 kidney transplants. Just so you guys know, my first manifesting disease was lupus, which is an autoimmune disease. Lupus, metaphysically, is the need and desire to be perfect all the time, being very, 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 very hard on yourself. Was that me? Yes, absolutely. So when I went in for treatment, I got my treatment from the Western doctor because I had it that bad that I was going to die. I tried the alternative. Didn't work for me, which was very, very difficult because I was all alternative. In my early 20s, late teens, I was all holistic and healthier than ever. I was all vegan, juicing, meditating, yogaing, reading. I was perfect in the spiritual world. And then I got sick, right? Some people get sick because they're unhealthy. Some people get sick because they're trying too hard. I was trying too hard to do everything perfect, right? Had to ease up on that a little bit. So my manifesting disease was lupus. And then 4 or 5 years later, I started 2-3 years of dialysis pre-kidney transplant number 1. My lupus went to permanent remission probably when my kidneys started to fail, which is good. Lupus is a chronic condition that comes and goes, remission and out of remission. My lupus went away completely, which was great. But then I was faced with the kidney damage from the lupus. So my first kidney transplant was 2006. Kidneys don't last forever when you have a transplanted organ, as Nicole and I talked about. The medication side effects are actually kidney problems. So Nicole has lungs and she has to be really cautious of her kidneys. Heart patients as well. You'll see a lot of patients that do have a specific organ transplant along with the kidney because the medication affects the kidneys. So I take medication for my kidneys so my body doesn't reject the foreign tissue, but it's bad for my kidneys. So as you can see, science isn't perfected as well. My surgeon right now currently is doing a lot of stem cell therapy where you would take stem cells from the donor and put it into the transplanted organs, the recipient's body, so that there would be a less need for medication, which means the organ would last probably forever, which would be great. So that being said, my second transplant was about 8 months ago, and that was because my first one's lifespan had run its course and I needed another one. But anyhow, kidneys are filters, okay? So when I started to have this recollection, or this, I'm gonna say remembrance, in 2015 through this spiritual awakening, I thought to myself, a lot of epiphanies happen when you go through this step too. I thought, holy shit, like I am highly empathetic. I take on everybody's stuff. I filter everybody's shit. No wonder my kidneys didn't want to work anymore. right? So it depends on how you want to look at things for yourself. Do I think that's pretty clear correlation? Yes, for sure. I take responsibility for that. So I do everything I can to stay in the wellness, and that's follow my instructions from my doctors to take care of my kidney, but I do everything in my power to stay right on the inside and stay in right alignment. And that's also a big theme that's happening right now, is the science and the spiritual community coming together to work for healing. Back in the ancient civilizations, science and spirituality were one and the same. Kathy Furness, who comes to a lot of our workshops, she's a science gal, and she talks about this all the time, and she's really passionate about us bringing back together the science and the spirit for healing, because back in the day, they were one and the same. Okay, so I just want to go through this really quickly, guys. Finding your balance. All right. Acknowledge, accept that you are indeed an empath. Own your inherent ability to begin the access of recognizing your innate gifts. This is for you to discover and find out. I can't look at you and say, you're on this level of the spectrum with your empathy. You can look it up. You can take a test online and see where you're at on the spectrum. But I can't tell you what your innate gifts are going to be or not be. They're unique to you. We're all different. We don't all have the same intuitive gifts and skills because we're all needed differently. You'll discover it as you go. I found personally that a lot of my inherent gifts stemmed from my direct trauma, right? So right now, currently, I've had kidney issues, I've had some autoimmune issues, it's been a big medical thing. I work in hospitals part-time to help people recognize the spirit correlation with their healing, right? So if you don't know what your purpose is and you don't know what your gifts are, where have you been? Where have you come from? What have you gone through? A lot of times that's where you'll find your gift. If you're still lost, you have to just pause for a moment in the void and get yourself in better alignment. And that can seem really overwhelming depending on your specific circumstance. My suggestion is take one step at a time. You don't have to do it as I did. And that's say, have this awakening and say, all right, everything's got to go. Let me just deconstruct and reconstruct everything. I wouldn't recommend it at all. But what you can do is say, all right, this doesn't really resonate with me. I don't think I'm gonna do that anymore. You know what, this job sucks, and every day I go to it, I hate it. I think I'm not gonna do it anymore. I'm gonna find another job. I don't like where I live. I wanna move to the mountains. I wanna have, okay, do that. Like I always say this to people. This is big concept. But if you just move towards what resonates with you and move away from what doesn't, you've already begun. You're like halfway there. If you recognize what resonates with you and what doesn't, stop putting yourself in situations that make you feel like shit. Why would you keep doing that? People, places, things, just don't do it. Don't do it. Don't have obligation towards something. I see this and I hear this a lot, and we're gonna get really real here. I wanna be really honest. I had to cut off my mother and my father during this time because there was a lot of dysfunction. And I had people say to me, oh, but Stephanie, that's your mother. How can you do that to your mother? I said, how could my mother have done that to me for the last 40 years? And then I had to process. This is what you have to do. To gain skill, you have to process your shit. That's what you have to do. So I sat and, I was pointing at my mother, right? Because she wasn't the mother that I wanted. She wasn't available for me when I was a child. She was highly depressed, all sorts of problems on her own, suicidal. So I had to process why I was so pissed at her. And that was my inner child coming out. That little girl who was making macaroni and cheese for herself on a stepladder on the stove at 3 years of age because no one was around to make her food. Nobody was available. So I had to recognize why she was driving me nuts, why I needed to cut her off, where she was coming from her life and her background and her trauma and her situation, and then realize, wait a minute, I'm an adult now. I'm not a child anymore. If this woman is going to be in my life, I have to stop trying to change her, fix her, heal her, because she's not having it. For 40 years, she's not listening to anything that I say, in one ear, out the other, and I'm drained over and over and over and over again. So I have to do one of two things. I either have to recognize I'm not doing this anymore and just not be in her life, or I have to be highly, highly, highly conscious if I allow her back into my existence. I have to create boundaries. I have to be prepared. And I'm not joking you. When I first started to explore bringing my mom back into my life, it was a process. I had just had my second kidney transplant. I don't have time time to fuck around with this anymore. I'm like, I've already been through 2 kidney transplants. I better get some really solid boundaries going here. I don't want anything else happening. So when I first brought my mom back in, it was a process and it was probably hilarious. But I would prepare myself, I'd sage myself. All right, here we go. Going in. Like you're going into the battlefield, right? And I'd be there and I'd be like, all right, she could say anything at any moment that's just gonna make me turn into that like 5-year-old child and I'm gonna freak out, right? Like you just know that. You've been in that with people where you just turn back into that child like this and then you've lost your shit already. You've lost it already. But I tried to do that. And then when I left, I cleared my energy. And I suggest for you guys to do that. Do all that now. Maybe down the road, you won't need to do it as much because you're in right alignment. But until you're in right alignment, you got to clear that space. You have to, sage your house, do all the things that you need to do for your space, for your soul, meditate. I can't speak any more highly about meditation. I know nobody wants to sit and do nothing for a minute plus, but meditation has profoundly changed my life. If you love yoga. Do something that's going to connect you with yourself. Go into nature. Talk to animals. Do what's going to connect you with your soul until you recognize what your alignment is, what your boundaries need to be in order for you to proceed. Okay? So my mother, for me, still a work in progress. Okay? So I cut her out of my life for about a year. And what I found out was this. I was blaming my mother my whole life. She's not this, she's this, I can't take it, she's a child, I'm the one I'm the parentified child, I was in victim mode. Yeah, she was kind of all of those things, but I was in victim mode. I was making her responsible and giving her my power, right? So what I had to realize was, wait a minute, I'm allowing this. I continually put myself in this situation. I have to take responsibility for that. And then when I decided to cut her out of my life, my mother's extremely codependent, very, very needy, very living vicariously through me. And if I'm not around, she'll tell me, she'll literally tell me this, you left and my right arm fell off. She does it like it's a very codependent kind of relationship. And when I cut her off, she was pissed. Why are you doing this? You're screwing up your whole life. And really all of those emotions, that rawness really got brought up to the surface. And I said, you know what? I love you dearly. I don't care what you say about me. Don't contact me. I had to just cut it, right? So it was probably about close to a year. Right? And when I started incorporating back into her life with all of my cloaks and how I had to enter the situation, she changed. When I eliminated my energy from her, after so much time lapsed, all of a sudden I went over, she said, I'm walking, I'm eating better, I'm doing this. And I thought, yeah, I told you that for 40 years. You never listened to me. And it took me exiting energetically the situation and for her to just be with herself to recognize. Maybe it was also that, and this is just a thought of mine, maybe it was that she wanted to be around me. So she thought, well, in order for me to have Stephanie's energy around, maybe I should take better care of myself. I don't know what the answer was, but something happened in her, a shift happened in her, right? And I was very, very, very pleased and happy for her. But then what I noticed was when I kept going back into my mother, that codependency came back real quick. I could see it starting to seep back. So that's when I had to say, all right, Stephanie, what are your boundaries here? Adhere to your boundaries. Don't go back into the loop. Don't go back into that old cycle because you guys will get on that wheel right away again if you don't set your boundaries, right? So for you guys as empaths, you gotta have boundaries. Right? Boundaries to get yourself in, or, it's up to you. Do you want to just ixnay people out of your life completely? And I have seen people do that. I have seen people completely disassociate from a mother, a father, a child, just because there was so much toxicity around their relationship. But there's this underlying dysfunction of, well, we're supposed to do this, right? It's up to you on your journey. How I perceive it now is I needed that cutoff space so I could create my boundaries. right? And then now when I bring her back into my life, I recognize that it's the same broken record, right? Like I recognize she's made some improvements, but like she is who she is, and that's not going to change. So now I feel empowered because I recognize her as a teacher. And I recognize her as a high teacher for me because she drives me nuts. And she challenges me to keep my patience and to stay present and to use all the things I learn in my meditation and my spiritual practice to stay centered, because I want to lose my shit when I'm with her and go back to that child. So she is a high teacher. And I believe that about all people in my life who drive me nuts. Thank you. You are my teacher. You know, like I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting you to be my teacher, but yeah, it's kind of happening now because this situation is arising that's making me feel really, really reactive. And when something makes you feel really, really reactive, somebody's mirroring something in the other person that needs to come up to be purged and cleansed, right? Does that make any sense? I think there comes a point of evolution and love where we talked about before, where you can have lots of people around you and you're seeing that unconditional love through everybody. And you can hold the space no matter what. I mean, I don't know what you guys believe in, but I do personally believe that Jesus was the highest empath that there was. He was highly caring, loving, and empathetic, but he was strong. Mm-hmm. He could hold space and he could heal. He was strong. He was empowered. But how many people were always around him? Mm-hmm. But he was in that unconditional love. So I think that, sometimes the people that we block are the very teachers that we need, mm-hmm. but you can only handle so many teachers at one time. What I do know to be true is this: if there's somebody that presents themselves to you and you don't want anything to do it, they'll keep coming back, or you will continually have that as your point of attraction through another person, another person, another person, another person, if there's a lesson that needs to be learned. We all know that, right? So I think that, and that's the thing that is so profound, what I've learned so far. I'm still very much on this journey. I'm still here on earth on this journey. But we make this shit so hard. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yes.
We make this so difficult. And when you recognize that it is a choice, if you want to struggle, it is a choice. Literally. Do you want to, all right, you just got a flat tire. Personality, all right. You could act like a total ass, ruin your day, have your blood pressure rise, struggle. Or you could just, all right, I got a flat, let me fix it. It's gonna get better in a minute. Yeah. If you recognize that you have that choice at every moment in your life, every moment is different, every reality is different. If you wanna keep bringing your past into the new reality to make it look like that shitty past, go ahead. Mm-hmm. I don't want to, right? So every moment for me is renegotiating my alignment. Literally every moment is a new reality. When you get to this consciousness, you recognize that life isn't linear. We just keep creating what appears to be a linear timeline. But when you live in that multi-dimensional existence, every reality is new. So instead of your whole life being, frustrated or upset about something or someone who did you wrong, and you keep taking it into the next moment and the next moment and the next moment and the next moment and the next moment, you're doing that. You can always just say, all right, I'm letting that go. I'm not taking it into this moment, this moment, mm-hmm. this moment, this moment. That's when your power comes back. Mm-hmm. That's when you say, holy shit, I've been an illusion this whole time. I have control, I have power, I can do this, I can manifest, oh my God, I can co-create, oh my God, things are happening, oh my God, I'm abundant and I'm worthy and I'm happy. It's this, and then all it is a deconstruction of your old beliefs into love. Cutting away all the shit you've been taught that's no longer serving you to get you to remember who you actually are. But we make it so hard. Yeah. And then when you start to recognize the love and alignment through yourself, and you start to look at other people, oh wow. Oh, you can say, oh my gosh, like I see that person, like they're in there, you can read their wounds in a second. You can see it. And you have to not judge them, try not to judge them, and say, I've lived that lifetime. I know what that's like. And just, doesn't mean you have to hang out with them or fix them. Just say they're on their own process. They're on this section of their journey. You're not better. Nobody's better than anyone else. We're all just souls, all going to the same place. Ram Dass has that beautiful quote that says, we're all here just walking each other home, right? So if you can perceive that, Then all of a sudden, there's no wars. There's no hate. We've been born in, this sounds very religious as I'm speaking lately, but we were born into illusion. We were born with this veil. And all we're doing is trying to lift the veil into love. That's it. And we all have a choice. And even if we're in a shitty period or an illness or a transition or a void where you're like, I'm 52, I have no idea who I am anymore, like I should have my shit together here. It doesn't matter what phase you're in life. It's all context for your story, right? So I was telling people in yoga class the other day, you can't read an amazing book and you're 3 chapters in and you're so excited to read it and then somebody rips a chunk out and you only have the last page left. It's not a story. Yeah, it accelerates really fast and you get to the end really fast, and that's what we want in life a lot. I want this. I want it now. Why isn't it happening now? Well, I'm going to persist on why it's not happening now. And then I'm going to keep telling the universe that I'm in lack and I don't have it now, and then it's going to keep not giving it to me now, and why isn't it happening yet? And I'm frustrated. Instead of just recognizing and being in the moment, talk about this in yoga all the time, but really understanding that even the void is context to your story. Even the negativity or the illness or the flat tire or whatever is context for your story. And it's a meaningful part of your story. And then all of a sudden, things actually do manifest faster because you're not in lack, you're not in want, you're not in expectation, you're not in judgment. That's all it's making the linear time appear longer. So when you start to cut all that crap away and you are in the moment as it is with compassion and love, shit starts rolling fast, right? And then all of a sudden you're in accelerated manifestation. And people will look at you and saying, holy shit, you're moving fast. And you say, really? I didn't even notice. Because they're stuck in worry, fear, doubt. Let me bitch about this. Let me bitch about this. Okay, you want to delay your timeline to your health and happiness and wellness? Go ahead. But I'm in this co-creation mode and things are going really good and I'm in alignment. Things are actually manifesting and working. People don't really like people who are manifesting and doing really well all the time. I always perpetually tried to get people on the love train. Come on, don't do this. Let's go. Come on. You can't. The moment you push somebody, the moment they retract, they recoil. And, as much as you love somebody and want to help them, I believe to keep my energy and not get exhausted in my skills of being an empath and an intuitive is to honor where they're at and just keep being in my own alignment and radiate what I want them to radiate. Everybody's a mirror for you. You have people that are more clear mirrors than others. If you get somebody who's a real clear mirror for you, you better look out. You're gonna see some ugly shit, right? But everybody's a mirror for you. Everybody's reflecting and deflecting something, right? So you gotta hold space for that person and just do it yourself. That's the thing. So many people, so many couples, this is the old relationship template. He's not doing this, she's not doing this, your socks are on the floor again, you're not doing this, you didn't take the garbage out. It's a blame game. You have to just, lead by example. Keep yourself in alignment, and then you won't lose your shit over somebody leaving a sock on the floor. That's just insane. You know what I mean? But you're way out of alignment. Things are way out of alignment. So move towards what feels good and resonates with you and just step away from what doesn't. Maybe it manifests or shape shifts into something more glorious down the road, but don't keep putting yourself on the hamster wheel that you hate, that makes you feel like shit. Step away from it, let it shape shift, let the universe deal with those energies. Maybe come back to it later, maybe not, I don't know. But keep just stepping into what resonates with you is just my greatest advice for you. I try to end with something simple because I do think everybody has the potential to awaken and to have a heart center activation and to have full joy and peace and health and abundance in this lifetime. You just have to believe you're worthy of it, number one. You got to go into your own shit and recognize where you're limiting yourself, where you're hanging out in self-doubt, and then say, you know what? Every second is a new reality. I have a choice what I want to bring into my new reality and when I don't. Literally, now's a new reality, now's a new reality, now reality. What are you bringing into your new reality? Is it helping you or is it hurting you? Don't do it. Just don't do it. It is as simple as that. It really is. I know people will still be like, but, no buts. It is as simple as that. Okay, so what Maggie's referring to is through my spiritual awakening, which you're obviously having something very similar. is that there's processes that happen. And one thing that really blew my mind, I was doing a lot of research about this when it started to happen. So I had some resources, but I was figuring it out on my own. I knew I was going through something pretty profound, that's for a fact. But what happened really clearly, there was a lot of weird things happening, but I'd say losing linear time probably was the weirdest thing that happened to me. So all of a sudden, I lost concept of time. I lost it. And I know my, people around me, well, that's because you're only working 2 days a week and you forget what day it is. I'm like, no, this is not what I'm talking about here. This is like, almost like my concept of time, like I went into a state of amnesia where, and I was well at the time, I was fully conscious, everything was fine, I was healthy. I couldn't figure out time made no sense to me. I would really have to focus on time. And it shifted a little bit now, Maggie, for me. I have a little more clearer concept of time, which I hoped had come back considering I have a business. I was very scared that I wasn't gonna be able to show up on classes on time. It did come back, but I think it was an experience that I had to have to recognize the multidimensionality that we're actually in and how things operate. I still sometimes lose it depending where I'm at, but I think I've reincorporated it in a way after having that seeing, because it was a little frightening for me. I remember in February when I went down to teach a class, this past February was my first class back after my transplant. I said to myself, okay, I have to teach class at 10 o'clock, which means I have to be in the studio at 9:30. So, I'm setting my clocks, I get ready, and I kept thinking, am I late? Everything was all discombobulated. And then I remember looking at my clock and it said like 9:28. And I said, okay, it's 9:28, let me go down to teach. Like a second later, I was like, oh my God, what time is it? Did I miss my class? It was me trying to grasp onto linear time again after having none. I had to retrain myself to really, I didn't know what time it was. I didn't know what day it was. I didn't know what year it was. I didn't know a calendar or time. And human beings operate by calendars and time. We have appointments and schedules, and we got to be at work at 8, and we operate through a calendar, but that's a man-made. It's something that we created to keep track of our schedules. In the greater scheme of the universe, there is no concept of time. It's all one. It's all multidimensional, which sounds nuts, right? But when you experience it, or if you've experienced it, you'll get it. It's just you realize how small you are, how much is going on, how the spirit world and the universe is so much greater than anything we could have manifested as a species. And it's very, very difficult to explain. When you have somebody going through a process like this, it's very difficult to articulate in words the sensations that you feel. It's almost impossible because it's not normal and people don't understand, and you keep trying to find a way to speak the experience, and it's very, very difficult. But losing all sense of linear time and space too for me, it was just like you were just connected with all that was in this dimension where there was.
It's all now.
It's all now, exactly. Literally that same statement where every single second is a new reality. But we think we're all in this linear lifetime where this is my past, this is my present, I'm going to my future. It's all a new reality in every moment, and every moment is now. Some people believe that the past, the present, and the future are simultaneously happening at the same time. It sounds so beyond logical reason, but when you experience something like that, you're like, oh my God, it just, epiphanies, mind-blowing. You're just like, oh my God, it's almost too much. And I think that you're presented with it at a time that you can conceptualize it or perceive it, because if all of this shit were to be exposed to everybody at one time, heart center awakening, loss of linear time, the loony bins would be packed. That's the truth. That is the truth. And that's something that I've thought about. I haven't done more processing of it, but I've thought about that. I've thought, are people insane? are people that are certifiably insane, were they just given this wild and crazy knowledge, and we try to put things in boxes and have things be right and wrong, and we just don't understand them? Like, have they just been given? I don't know, but this is just something that I've thought. I've looked at all diseases and conditions differently because of what I have experienced. It's just like from a greater perception. Could I have somebody argue all of this to me? Probably somebody in the scientific community, sure. But what happens when we all work together? Things really change then, you know? But when you start to have these epiphanies, like Celeste was saying, these realizations, this like, I'm just seeing this now, and I needed this. Like, I was just thinking about that, or like, this is where I'm supposed to be. That's the beginning of all that is when you start to get in line. I remember feeling that too. I was like, oh my God, like this person, I was just talking about this is so cool. I'm feeling this excitement and this energy. It's because you're getting into alignment. And you know, my process and awakening is a process, because again, if you were presented all of this stuff at once, it'd be way too stimulating and overwhelming, way too stimulating. So it has to be broken down to when you can handle it. And that's what my journey has been the last 2 years, is these epiphanies and these recognitions and realizations, and then like a coming down to ground the energy and process it, right? And then like, as soon as I'm processing, like, oh, something else will happen. And then I think about it, I process it, I ground it, you know, and that's kind of how it's been. And I recognize that this will be how my whole life is now. I don't think that I'm gonna get to a place where I say, all right, like, I'm done. Unless maybe there's a conscious choice, maybe there's free will to say, I don't want to do this anymore. But I do believe firmly that once you see, you can't unsee. Once you're awakened to something, you can't just pretend like you didn't see that. You can, and you might go delusional. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to go away, you know? So, but I think that it happens in a process, and hence life and our journey and what we want to manifest. It is a process. Don't be so excited to get to the outcome. I am so excited to get to certain outcomes in my life. And I recognize now that it's only delaying the process. It's only making it go longer. And when I have expectations and judgments about how it's rolling or how it's not rolling, I'm only creating more time in that time-space reality. So if I just say, all right, I told you what I want. I'm gonna just stay in alignment and let it roll. It happens when it's meant to happen, or something better happens than I expect it to happen. It's never been the opposite for me, where I have trust and faith and something doesn't work out the way I want it, and I say, boy, that was a really shitty outcome. It's always been better than expected, but very often has it been exactly as I wanted it to look, right? That's just me just trying to pretend like I have control of everything. I don't, right? So. Well, thank you guys so much. If anyone else has any questions, let me know. If you want any resources, or, I mean, as I said, I'm very much still doing this and in this process, but I just feel that I need to share the truth because I think it's happening.